Well, guess what? It's 2021. These young kids are doing and saying different things nowadays, Greeny. What can we go off of? We can go off of what he's done on the field. He's lost 2 games as a starter going against some of the best competition alive, and that speaks more to me than him saying, you know what, I don't have to manufacture a chip. I don't have to be Michael Jordan and say, you know what, I was cut from my high school team and I'm going to carry it the rest of my life. Yeah, that works for some people. But you know what, Greeny? It doesn't have to work for everyone. So until I know for sure, and I've met him and I've seen him, that he's a guy who cuts corners, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And to Lewis's point, Lewis is 100% right. If Justin Fields had said this, we would be crushing Justin Fields because there is a narrative out there in the scouting community among some coaches that Justin Fields is lazy. There is a narrative out there that he's not as dedicated, and it's just not true. And we would fall victim to that, and that will be spreading like wildfire. And it's just something that we have to, as people who are on TV and talk about this stuff, we have to help control that narrative. So good point bringing that up, Lou.
I agree with you completely, David. Let's just keep it here because we've now opened up a bunch of different conversations in one field. So there's a couple of different ways that I look at this. One of them is Trevor Lawrence is talking about not having a chip on his shoulder. Tom Brady was the 199th pick in the draft. That's how you get a chip on your shoulder. Trevor Lawrence has been the anointed one since he was a sophomore in high school. So the entire narrative on him has been he's the best ever from the time he was 15 years old. There's no way to get a chip on your shoulder while all anyone has been doing is telling you how great you are. But the second piece of that, which I hadn't even thought of, which Lewis just said, about how if those words had come out of the mouths of several other people, namely Justin Fields, they would have been treated very differently. Field, what are your thoughts as you hear all this?
Yeah, the pre-draft process can often be a Rorschach test, right, Greeny? The way that we interpret different things that happen to a player leading up to the draft changes based on who that player is. And, you know, to be honest with you, like you said, Greeny, I wasn't thinking about what if these had been the words from Justin Fields, but just in listening to both Lewis and Booger go back to back on what it would be perceived as or how it would be perceived, now I can't stop thinking about it. This would be the story of the next 2 weeks leading up to the NFL draft as we wait and see where Justin Fields goes during the 2021 NFL draft, which, by the way, even if he said it, there's like no anecdotal or empirical evidence to suggest that he isn't a maniac worker, right? I mean, Justin Fields was right there with Trevor Lawrence as being the anointed one. They come from the same region, the Atlanta region. They were the #1 and #2 prospects at the quarterback spot in their draft class. And Justin Fields is not a consolation prize. He has been unbelievable at Ohio State. He, of course, took down Trevor Lawrence and Clemson in the college football playoff semifinal this past year. So my first thought if you're going to ask me about like what I thought of Trevor Lawrence's comments, I don't make too much of them because it hasn't hindered him in any way up to this point, conceding that the NFL is an entirely different beast. But now I can't stop thinking about it, is that we need to be consistent in how we perceive these comments from players, especially those who play at the same position and especially, moreover, those who are considered in a comparable tier.
That's a great point. And Lewis, as I give it back to you for a final word, I'm just imagine if I had said, someone close to Justin Fields said, he's not award-driven, he's not, I want to win a Super Bowl at all costs. I mean, the reaction, to your point, would be extraordinarily different. Go ahead, Lewis, final words.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And remember this, the guy who came back into the NFL to coach Justin Fields, supposedly, that was the draw. That was the draw for Urban Meyer to come back. To coach Trevor Lawrence, excuse me. That was the draw to come back to Jacksonville, to have the opportunity to coach him. What were some of the things that he talked about that quite honestly drove him to the sidelines? His burning desire to win at all costs. Knowing that in college football, in big-time college football, that when you lose one game, it can absolutely just derail everything that you're trying to do, and how hard he took that. And how much he had that kind of burning desire to constantly achieve at the highest level and to be perfect in everything they had to do. One, because that's who he is, and two, because that was what was required at the program that he last coached at Ohio State. With being drafted #1 overall, the expectation is that you are, #1, the #1 player in the draft. 2, people have talked about you as being truly, and I hate this word, but I'm going to use it, generational. You're one of the best ever to come out in the pre-draft process as far as how you are evaluated. You are considered one of the best ever. And you're saying now that, yeah, you've had all this success up until this point. Yeah, you're passionate about the game. Yeah, it's important to you, but you're not a win-at-all-cost type of guy. There were other people in that article who said if Trevor had to walk away from the game now, he'd be just fine. Or if he had to walk away from it early in his career, he'd be just fine. He's not wired that way. Well, with the number 1 pick in the draft, the expectation is you are a game changer. A game changer at the highest level. And maybe Trevor still is. Again, I haven't met him and I don't know him. And I'm not trying to be critical of the young man. I'm just saying, as I said originally, had this been Justin Fields, considering all the BS that has surrounded this young man, this would be more than the number 1 story, Greeny. This would be absolute wildfire right now. And that's just a fact. So just remember that.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.